With that, it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce our guest, Jill Rathburn. Jill is a holistic health nurse and board certified recovery coach who helps women overcome lingering health challenges, often from years of addiction, to radically improve their lives. Despite her healthcare background, it wasn't until she embarked on a comprehensive, dedicated healing journey from alcohol use disorder that Jill truly embodied the lifestyle needed to heal and transform. Jill is an emerging content expert on addiction, recovery, alcohol use disorder, and the healing continuum. Specifically, Jill's work on the 5 stages of healing is getting much attention for its easy to understand process that clearly shows the progression of recovery, common areas of stagnation, tips to overcome roadblocks, and clear direction on how to advance the healing journey regardless of disease. In summary, Jill's work shows that healing is the pathway to transformation. And we are lucky to have her with us here today to speak about these very stages of healing. So I'm going to add her a spotlight.
Hello, everybody. I am just thrilled to be here amongst your presence. Wow, we have a nice number here and it's in the middle of the afternoon. So a big congratulations to yourself for taking the time. Okay, so this is, yes, you can go ahead and advance to the next slide. Okay, so everybody, and I'm not sure who's going to enjoy this next 30 seconds more than me. I want you all to find your way in comfortably in your chair. I invite you to close your eyes. And I know many of you who are on this call, and I can picture each and every one of you now. And with your hands out or your hands over your heart, so you can stimulate the love hormone, oxytocin. I want you to just start breathing deeply, breathing in for 4. And elongate the exhale, breathing out. Again, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. One last time, breathing in, and breathe in love and learning. And breathe out any distractions. Come with your eyes open. Beautiful. All right, next slide. And I feel like a presenter up on a symposium podium. It's always would say next slide back in the 70s and 80s. I'm going to date myself. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to go into my story because of time, but I obviously have a big sense of what early sobriety is all about because I am in recovery from alcohol use disorder. Very briefly about that is when by the time I was 40, I had an unhealthy relationship to alcohol. And at that time, I had what we call mild or moderate alcohol use disorder. But it wasn't until 15 years later that I went into recovery and I had severe alcohol use disorder. And so I have a very deep sense of what it's like to go from active addiction and into sobriety. And I want to highlight 2 things, really. And that is that we underestimate essentially the low level of health that we have at the time that we get into recovery. And we also underestimate how much power and opportunity is there. So it's this duality, if I'm saying that right, this low of the health, but high of the opportunity that is happening at the same time. And when we're in early sobriety, we often don't see it because I really underestimated how sick I was when I got into recovery. And it's body, mind, and spirit. And mind, I mean mental and emotional. And why all of those things is because addiction is it's a whole body, mind, and spirit dysfunction and disconnection. It involves every system. And that is why it's a mystery. It's cunning, baffling. And so you'll hear me mention mind, body, and spirit as we go through, because we need to address all of these things as we start to heal. I want to mention something on stress. When we are in active addiction, our stress level, our stress response, especially in our body and mind, is very high. So we're constantly stressing the body with the amount of alcohol in our system, with the lying that's going on. We know things aren't right, and it's stressful. But then when we get in recovery, early recovery, while there is some relief, there's other stresses that begin. And we just need to be so aware that when we are having a stress response, which is the sympathetic nervous system, we're not able to really heal, which is in the parasympathetic nervous system. And so it's why we emphasize the healing journey, is because we need to move away from disease, which is where stress lives, and on to healing. And so that's all I'm going to say, because we could do hours on stress, but it would be absent for me not to bring up stress when we talk about healing. And so I'm going to say next slide. All right. So recovery, let's focus on that word a second. So we all are familiar with the term when somebody went in for surgery and they're now recovering, or somebody has gone through cancer treatment and they are now recovering. So we're comfortable with the word there. So I want us to be comfortable with the word here and what it really means, because recovering from surgery and breast cancer, recovery means healing from surgery, healing from breast cancer. So with addiction, when we're in recovery, so we go from active addiction into recovery, we are essentially almost immediately on a healing journey. And as soon as you think of it that way, it, for me anyway, it was an aha moment. And I wanted to share that with you as well. So what our job is, and this is a big job, but it's not too difficult. It's interesting, actually, that the body is always in a state of healing. We may or may not have a sense of that. Some of us who are clinicians know this more. But, when we sleep is when we heal the most. We're always in a state of healing. But our actions, our thoughts will greatly influence how well we heal. And so to the extent that we can participate and cooperate will dictate how well we heal, right? And so regardless of where you are on your journey, and I'm speaking about addiction because most of us have that in common, but I could be talking about any chronic, progressive, especially lifestyle disease, of which it's over 90% of disease is because of those things. So regardless of where you are on your journey, there is always a path forward. And we're going to talk about that. So I created the 5 stages of healing. And I did this because I love systems, and I really am a systems geek. I think I should have been like a computer engineer or something, because I have always loved systems. And when I got into recovery, once I turned the corner, I, of course, just immediately gravitated towards healing my own health and studying the literature out there. And I studied Patricia Fennell's work on chronic disease. I studied Stephen Mellamis's work. He's a physician, an addiction physician, on the stages of recovery. And most of us are aware of Kubler-Ross's death and dying stages. And then, of course, AA 12 steps. And so I immerse myself with these. Most of those are really disease models, but not all. and came up with the 5 stages of healing, which is stop, accept, learn, commit, and transform. So if you haven't yet, I want you to take out a pen and paper, and I'm opening up the chat bar right now, so I can communicate with you all. I want this to be interactive, guys, girls, ladies. I want this to be interactive. But right now, what I want you to do is, as we progress, I want you to be asking yourself, what stage am I in now? And I'm just going to do a timeout and say that there's the stage of your recovery, which is the primary reason you got into recovery. So that's your primary healing journey. But you might have a secondary healing journey dealing with an emotional issue or a situational issue. You may have a tertiary dealing with food choices and its impact on your health. So we all have different health issues. And that's the beauty of recovery. We keep peeling the onion. Well, as you hit those layers, those are new journeys. So what stage are you in now? That could be a few different answers based on what you're working on. What are you doing now that is helpful, and what is keeping you from proceeding to the next stage? I want you to ask yourself those things. So write those questions down or take a screenshot. So stage 1 is stop. So stop is when an immediate, dramatic, often incident, a dramatic incident happens, and it stops us in our tracks. This with alcohol, this might be a DUI. It could be losing our job. It could be words from a loved one that says, I can't go on like this, or mommy, you scare me. Those are powerful, dramatic events. With other illnesses, it could be watching your lab levels decline, and you get a call from a physician who wants to speak with you about diabetic care, for example. That would create a visceral reaction, and that would stop you in your tracks. So something happens and it causes us to stop. The question to ask is, what needs to change? Now, at this time in stop, it's a bit of a crisis. It's very, very, very difficult, but highly emotional. And all you need to right now focus on is what needs to change. You don't need to get in the weeds with what my life is going to look like and how am I going to do that, and all these other things that swirl around our head, which is what has kept us from getting into recovery in the first place. So at this point, we're at a timeout, and life cannot go on. Life is not sustainable as the way it was. What needs to change? We really need to own that, right? And then the next question is, where could I get help? And next slide, because we are finally trying to achieve an understanding and what I'm going to call the gift of desperation. Many people refer to this incident as the greatest gift that happened in their recovery. Like the highest moment in recovery is this gift of desperation, because that's when everything changed, because their life got so low that they couldn't bear to carry on in that way, and they were willing to ask for help. That is the gift of desperation. Now, with addiction, I'm just going to point out that the gift of desperation does not have to be, let me rephrase. We need to, I want to inspire anyone out there who may be considering their relationship with alcohol, and perhaps they're aware it's becoming problematic. She Recovers has a principle that says we don't have to hit rock bottom to ask for help. We don't have to hit rock bottom to begin our pathway to recovery. And so I encourage us that this gift of desperation doesn't have to be the lowest of rock bottom. They aren't necessarily the same thing. The gift of desperation is you're desperate to change. And so I'll leave it at that. All right. So first is stop. Now we go to accept. Now, accept is honestly the most important stage here, because we cannot heal what we don't accept, right? We cannot heal what we don't accept. Now, there's a lot of, I'll use the word pain, discomfort, some anguish that goes on in this phase, because you're really just trying to organize your thoughts about what is happening here. The crisis is over, things have stabilized, and you're now presented with potential options. And so there are reasons why this phase might be difficult. You may not be willing to want to leave your old life. You may think it's not so bad after all. It was dysfunctional, but you're not visualizing it yet. You may not have the support around you yet. You truly may be overwhelmed and not know how to go forward. So there are reasons why this phase can be very uncomfortable. But eventually we do find our way to understanding and accepting the reality and wanting to get better. Do you truly understand the reality here? Okay. And what we're trying to achieve, next slide, is the truth, getting to the truth. Truth is very important to people in recovery, because we were living a life that was untrue prior to this. It was an illusion. The opposite of truth is illusion. And so there is a sense of, finally, there at the conclusion of this phase is a sense of acceptance that leaves us ready to move forward. Maybe even a little excited, okay, we're going to do this. And so, but the truth, always speaking the truth, is very important in recovery. And anyone who is in recovery or knows anyone in recovery knows it's very hard for us to speak an untruth about anything, because this is so important. Human nature can sometimes take hold, and we sometimes start to either consciously or unconsciously try to live our old lives. Sometimes we get around an environment and we get amnesia in terms of what we're doing. And it can cause us to move back into old habits. Sometimes we just lose the desire or motivation. Whatever the reason is, all of this it's neither good or bad. It just can be painful. Relapse can be painful because it's easier to stay in recovery than get in recovery, right? So in science, we learn that an object in motion stays in motion. An object at rest stays at rest. So when we're in motion, when we are on that pathway of recovery, early recovery, and again, I know this is difficult, lots of swirling issues always. But if we're on that pathway in motion, we are in good shape. If we backslide, that happens, and that has its learnings as well, because eventually, most often, another dramatic event happens and brings us back to stop, and then we move to accept. And now we're a little bit smarter. Well, and I say smarter, meaning we're bringing our experience with us, right? We're in control of this life. We bring the experience with us, and we are maybe better equipped to fully accept the gravity of the situation and move to the next step. So stop, accept, now learn. Now, learn is such a great step. It is actually my personal favorite. It's because it's like being a kid in a candy store if you are a lifelong learner and love learning. And hopefully, and you all seem to be lifelong learners and love learning, or you wouldn't be here. So this step is for you too. So we go from a point of I have, maybe stop and accept as, oh, I have a challenge, I have a problem, to learn is I have an opportunity. Like, wow, gee, what can I do to heal? How can I start to feel better as quickly as possible? And in fact, as soon as you get to this point, you do want to start to feel better as quickly as possible, because all of a sudden you see it and you're around other people in recovery and they're potentially a little bit further. You see, their health and vitality and so forth. So it's inspiring. Our peer group can be very helpful here. So you know what's ahead. And so it's not uncommon to go to different practitioners. I went to a couple of different functional medical docs. I went to naturopaths. I went to other holistic healers. I looked at my gut health, my immune health. I went to India and studied yoga for 30 days. I literally went on a healing journey for a full year. And so learn is that phase where everything is an opportunity to, everything is new, and even things you may have learned before, I encourage you to take a look at it again. So the next slide. So the questions that we're asking here is what are the priorities? So we went the next slide. What are the priorities? What are the most pressing challenges? Now, I had mentioned a little bit ago that in recovery, we work on the most important issue first, right? Right? As Don Nichols will say, we work on what's going to kill us first. Then we work on what's going to kill us second. I mean, I'm kidding, of course. But addiction is a serious illness. So, but we work on our most pressing challenges, and then we go from there. And so ask yourself, what are your top 3 issues? And this is where I'm going to turn to the chat bar. To the extent that you're willing, put in some of the issues that you're focusing on right now. Maybe you've been in recovery for 3 years and you're now focusing on your nutrition. Maybe you have turned the corner with the alcohol issue, but you realize that you've had 20 years of resentments, and you really want to focus on resentment and forgiveness. That's a big nut. So that needs its own path, right? So I love that. Healing inner child. I love that. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. Yes. Yes. I mean, when you go back to your family and you hear somebody say something, right, we get triggered and we all of a sudden remember those patterns, and it brings us in that role that maybe we don't want to be in, or we weren't comfortable there. So yes, generational trauma. Yes. Beautiful. That is getting so much attention. There is incredible work by Elizabeth Kipp, and so many other healers and clinicians and researchers on intergenerational trauma and trauma in general. Stephen Porges's work, could go on. So thank you. Trust myself. Yes, trust. And trust is something that we earn in recovery, both from other people and also of ourselves. Self-love, trusting of ourselves. That's part of that. Thank you. So ultimately, we're trying to achieve, and next slide, Kelly, is we want to explore with an open mind, right? Because where you are today is a different person than just even yesterday. You want to lead with a beginner's mind always, always. That's a Buddhist phrase, lead with a beginner's mind. And I just want to point out that I'm just going to name, as you explore some of the treatment or recommendation and options out there for your different challenges with addiction and other disease. I'm just going to point out that something very exciting has happened in addiction treatment in just the last couple years. We've had it's called prescription digital therapy, and basically it is it's cognitive behavior therapy it is a software package that has been run through clinical trials, just like a drug would, where they're testing efficacy, meaning how effective it is. And you can now, for those of you in addiction treatment in an inpatient or outpatient basis, you can get a prescription for this. I mean, how cool is that? And this is for substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, and there's one coming online with alcohol use disorder. I believe this is Reset and Reset O by Pear Therapeutics. I do not work with this company. I just am fascinated by this. And this whole technology is coming on like a storm, and you're going to see it more and more. There's something out there for ADHD, for sleep, for gut issues. It's just powerful. And so that's new. That is exploring information with an open mind, because at first blush, you're thinking, a prescription for a computer program? But no, lead with a beginner's mind. And just lastly, medication assisted treatment for all addictions is so underutilized. It's under 5% of people that need these medications are not getting them. So if you if your path has not crossed yet with at least a discussion with a clinician about naltrexone for alcohol use disorder, oral, or it comes in an injection, Vivitrol. And so that takes the compliance away in early recovery. Again, I don't work for these companies, but I must speak up with some treatments that are not getting quite the attention, and I'm doing my part here at the perfect point in this presentation. So stop, accept, learn, now commit. Okay, so remember when I said that if we were going to get tripped up, it might be the revolving door that happens between stop and accept. That's the first main place that we stagnate. The second place that we stagnate is we become experts in addiction, and we go to podcasts and webinars like this one and talk to clinicians and have all these ideas. And then guess what? We don't do them. So it's essential that we commit to a daily routine with what resonates the most with us based on our most urgent issues. There is no substitute to doing, right? Just do it. A Nike slogan. So recovery is an action game. Healing is an action game. And so commit is such an important phase. So the question we're asking here is, next slide, is what can you put into your daily practice? Okay. So what is realistic, right? So think SMART, right? Those, remember those goals we learned in college or high school or even jobs, those specific, measurable, actionable, realistic with a time, with a time associated with it, right? What those goals, like what's realistic? So for example, if you realize you haven't been doing much movement and you used to love running, so I wouldn't recommend 3 miles every day, starting immediately, because that wouldn't be helpful to your body. You could crash and burn on that. No, you would start slow. So and you want I'm going to meditate for an hour a day. Well, why don't we start with 10 minutes? Can you do 10 minutes a day? And if you don't think you can, back it up. Can you do 5 minutes of meditation every morning okay, I think I can do 5 minutes. Put 5 minutes in your schedule. And we'll talk about that momentarily, is how this all comes together. So pick 1 to 3 things for your body, for your mind, for your spirituality, maybe for your emotional health. 1 to 3 max. That even sounds like too much, but it's baby steps. And next slide is I'm going to suggest that you establish a new daily routine with a vitality tracker. And that is my loving way of offering essentially like a to-do list, but it really is for our vitality and health. And I created this and I put it in my Healing Strategies Guide for all of you to have. And I've been using this for 4 years now that I've been coaching. And it is a prompter for us to make sure that we are doing what we want to be doing. Life gets busy. So we want to set us up to succeed. So we use a vitality tracker and we actually, in an editable document, put in what it is we want to do. And we want to do this, and we can do this because we are rewriting new habits. And I encourage you to do about the same things every day, right? Around the same time. So your nervous system knows what to expect. So there's a phrase called neurons that fire together, wire together. That's, in other words, when we do the same things every day, and especially around the same time, our neural network gets built. It knows what to expect. It knows what to expect. Neurons that fire together, wire together, habits are created. And while that is going on, other habits that we want to push aside, neurons that fire apart, wire apart. So those fall by the wayside because of what you've added, what you're focusing on. What you focus on grows. So when you're looking at your routine, it's as much what you add and what gets removed. And some of this is just by default. There's just not time in the day to do some of this others that's not helpful. Transformation is not a final destination. It's an expression of enlightenment. It is a feeling of gratitude, natural gratitude. It is recognizing, gee, I have not thought about drinking for a week. Wow. Or, wow, look at these. Look at my yard. I have never seen such beautiful flowers and plants. And what's going on with all this rain in the East Coast? That is what's happening. We are watching Mother Nature transform because of all the proper elements are lining up: the sun, the water, the earth. And so transformation is a state of being, not a final destination. I want you to think about, back to the questions, what stage are you in? What are you doing that's helpful? What is keeping you from moving to the next step, right? I want you to think about that. Okay, the question to ask though, right? We're almost done here on Transform. The question to ask, how is your life improving? In other words, if you ever think, geez, when am I going to transform? When am I going to have an awakening? In AA, they talk about the awakening. Sometimes when you stop and realize all the things that are going on in your life, the relationships that are more cohesive. Maybe you're more attracted to your intimate partner for the first time in years. Maybe your connection to your children or your siblings or your parents has a softness all of a sudden. And what was wrong is washing away naturally. Like, how is your life improving? And then the final question on this is, or the understanding really is, this is transformation is when the whole human experience synergizes, and every aspect is working optimally. Body, mind being mental health, emotional health, and then our spiritual connection to our higher power. All of that. I had no spiritual connection to my higher power. And I literally said, I need to find a connection to my higher power. I set an intention and sought it. Go after what you're seeking. Set your intentions. And then things will start to synergize. So this is the culmination. This is everything we just went through. This graphic you will find on my website. I want to shout out to Doreen and my amazing editor and designer. She designed this. We designed this together, and I just love it because it's a flower. This is something you can take a screenshot of and print it out and put it up on your bulletin board. Ask yourself these things and share this with your family. Just as there is a progression of disease, right? Or dysfunction. These things happen over time. What used to not be a problem slowly becomes a problem, then a very big problem, then a crisis. That's a progression. But there is also a progression of healing and how well we participate. And my new word, cooperate. I love that. How much we cooperate with our human body experience is how well we'll heal, how fast we'll heal, how efficient we'll heal, right? And it's all about, and I want us thinking mind, body, spirit. Think of that. What am I doing for my mind today? What am I doing for my body today? How am I connecting to the universe today? So healing, the greatest of healing experience in the most efficient and effective ways is when mind, body, and spirit work together and synergize. So recovery is an amazing healing journey. Okay, we're coming on to the last slide, which is my contact information. And I would love to hear from you, Kelly. I please ask your questions. And then we can conclude, with how to get in touch with me, if you would like. And I just want to share that because so many of you I know and love, full disclosure, but I think some of you know this, is I did that presentation without any of my notes, but thankfully I have been living and breathing this. But it was the energy of this webinar that allowed me to do that pretty seamlessly.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was awesome and so beautiful. I love all the graphics too. So I'm really glad we got the slides working. We were able to share those. That's so beautiful. And I think how this was described in your bio, it just resonates so much that this breakdown of the stages is so simple and makes so much sense. And I've never heard it told like that. So I'm really glad that I was able to hear it. And I'm sure everyone else was too. I just want to tell everyone that's still watching, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A in the webinar or just in the comments section on Facebook, and my co-host will filter those out and send them over to us so we can get Jill to answer them. I wrote a few questions down, so I'll ask. The first one is, if someone doesn't know where they fall amongst these stages right now, where can they start, or how do they start to try to figure that out?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that is really what I'm working on. Stay tuned. No, it is my intention to develop further content and essentially a book, which would be like a workbook where you can really dive in deep and basically ask these kind of questions. And it also will help you make your way through because I just hit the highlights. But that is why I did go through them the way I did and put the questions to ask. Fundamentally, if you know that you have a challenge and you're still doing it, then you do need to, you do need to own that and start with stop. It's hard to improve upon something that was, that is in progress. And that can take years. I mean, my work tends to be with people who have, I focus on health and healing. So stop is where I begin, working with in the healing process. But hopefully I articulated that well with the questions on the side. With accept, can you be nodding your head and completely accept that you have a certain problem and it would be beneficial if you never did it again, or on a daily basis, one day at a time. I'm sorry, one day at a time. That is your intention, to be void of something. In recovery, we live one day at a time. We don't get too far ahead of ourselves. And so that is, hopefully I explained how that would work, or you could have a sense of what stage you're in. So I actually have that question to other people is, what stage do people think they're in?
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's a great question, maybe for everyone to ask themselves, whatever issue they think is at the forefront right now for them. And that's what I like about these stages. They can be used for other things besides just substances. And they can ask themselves, like you said, what stage do you think you're in? And then do those questions resonate? Can you accept where you are? And are you ready to make the change? So I think just asking those questions will help people decide what stage they're at, and then help them start to move through those, for sure.
Yeah. So most people, once they turn the corner and accept and want to change, live in stage 3, 4, and 5. We're always learning new things and then making a decision. Do I want to bring that in my daily life? Is that important enough that I need to make that part of my routine? So that's commit. And then, transform it, like I say, is not an end destination. So most people, as they progress through their challenges, end up in a pretty good space, living in 3, 4, and 5. But then something else comes along and like, oh yeah, I need to work on this. And so that's when the system starts again.
And we had one question. Someone asked, can you be an accept and learn at the same time?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. 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 Yeah. I love that. Of course, systems and models are, while I love them because I like to understand, okay, A to B to C to D. And I've noticed it's helpful for other people as well. But of course, there's like a muddying. What's not as muddying is stop is really stop. It's hard to proceed off of stop, or then that revolving, stop to accept, back to stop to accept. So, those two can go back and forth. But I love that question. It's absolutely possible because there's different levels of accept, right? There's the intellectual, like, oh yeah, I know I shouldn't do that. But then there's the, oh, I really get it. I really want to move, I want a better life without this. And you get it in where you feel it, because the heart is much more powerful manifester than the brain. So intellectual is almost easy. Like, yeah, I understand that. But the getting the heart involved and the doing that's why I emphasize doing, because when we put things in motion, it's more likely to stick.
Yes, for sure. And I think that sometimes people can probably remain in the learn phase for a while before they really want to commit and make something about this a part of their daily practice, I imagine.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. We're lifelong learners. And I think though recovery helps spark that because we're so clear headed. And then people say, oh, have you heard, have you tried such and such, or have you read such and such a book? Or I have an essential oil that's amazing for the liver and healing. And like people give you tips. And so all that's learning. And She Recovers is amazing for many reasons. But they have 2 meetings a day, their online gatherings. And I'll tell you that those are chock full of information. It's incredible. I mean, these people know more than I do, I swear. Constant.
Yeah, I'm always learning something in those gatherings for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So excellent.
Awesome. I think that ends it for our question section. So thank you so much, Jill. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your time and your heart and your experience. And thank you to those who make this series possible. And most importantly, for all of our viewers for showing up today and holding space and bringing forward your questions. We truly are stronger together. Next Monday, we will be on Sacred Pause as it's Memorial Day in the United States. And we will return Monday, June 6th with Hazelton Betty Ford author Betsy Conyers. So please join us then. To learn more about Mental Health Monday and all of our upcoming sessions, please visit sherecovers.org/Mental Health Mondays. And for more information about She Recovers Foundation and all of our recovery-focused programs, resources, and touch points, please visit sherecovers.org.